how accessible is the country of Sweden from 1 to 10?
Well, very unscientific. I would say like 4.5.
4.5. Hi, and welcome to Trend Talks, a podcast from Stendahls by IO. Today we're going to talk about a very important topic, accessibility. My name is Kai, and you are?
I'm Sara.
And we are hosting this episode. So today we're having a very special guest, Anette. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
Before we start, we need to describe ourselves. So if anyone can't really see us, they should know about us. Anette.
Well, I'm Asian and have grey hair put in a high ponytail, and I've got really dark glasses and a pink scarf and dressed in black.
Thank you. And Sara?
Yeah, I'm Sara. I have short brown blonde hair, black glasses, a fabulous dress with a pattern made of black and white cats. Yeah.
And my name is Kai, and I'm kind of blonde with a man bun and having some kind of hipster shirt on myself. So that's me, I guess. Was it okay, Anette? Would you approve it for
Yes, I would.
Show?
Yes, definitely.
You would?
Yeah, I got a good picture.
Thank you. So let's talk more about you. Who are you, Anette?
Well, I'm an accessibility consultant and a running guide and audio describer and project lead and former skater.
Former skater?
Yes, and former gamer.
Former gamer?
Yes.
Okay. Now I'm getting curious. So how does skating and gaming come together with accessibility?
Well, not really much. But gaming, yes, there's some parts that can actually be accessible during gaming as well, with accessible tools you can use to actually be able to game, even if you don't have vision or if you've got mobility problems.
But also, can it help if you are fully functional, and can it also help you and improve the gaming experience?
Maybe. I'm not really sure about that because it was a long time since I actually was active in gaming. So I'm getting old.
And you're also chairman of the Swedish Association for Accessibility?
Yes.
Branschföreningen Svensk Tillgänglighet?
Branschorganisationen Svensk.
Branschorganisationen.
Yeah. Or BOOST, as we call it, because it's short and much easier to say.
All right. And what do you do in this association?
Well, we're at the moment 63 members, and they're all private companies, big or small, that works with, we're all experts in all different kinds of accessibility. It could be physical or digital or mobility or products or services. So we're all kind of experts in our different areas.
What led you to your interest in accessibility in the first place?
Well, I started at a company in Borås. They were doing like beacon solutions for as an addition to tactile flooring for people with visual impairments. So we wanted to make something that also directed people and talked about what's in that special spot you were actually standing at. So that's what's actually started me off. And I got an assignment with a company in Alingsås and started working with them. And I actually then decided to continue working with accessibility because I think it's important and fun and it's good for the society.
Yeah, it is. It really is. And also today, our co-host today, Sara Lerén from Stendahls. So, and you are our head of accessibility or director of accessibility, and
Yes.
have a very deep and special interest in this area. So, do you want to tell us a little bit about where did your interest start and what's your history?
I'd say my interest in accessibility and inclusion started a long time ago. I mean, more than like I would say about 25 years ago, at least. I had my first summer job at the library in Mölnlycke, where I was raised. And I started noticing that the local Nazis were like putting in racist propaganda in the magazines. And I got so upset by that I felt that I had to do something about that. I talked to the nice librarians and asked them if it was okay if I handled that and started, making sure that no Nazis were putting propaganda in the books or the magazines. And they were super happy about it because, I mean, to them, libraries are all about inclusion. No one should feel that they're not welcome there. So I started, going through all the magazines and taking out the Nazi propaganda, putting it in the trash. That's where it all started. And then I went into, IT and digital solutions and realized that there's lots to be done here. That's mainly about, adapting digital and physical solutions to human behavior, basically. And that's the nice thing about human behavior. It differs so much. And we're all of us impaired in one way or another in different situations. So everything that we could do to make things more accessible is good for us and for our society as a whole, I would say.
So accessibility. Let's start big. So let's talk about Sweden. How accessible is the country of Sweden from 1 to 10?
Well, very unscientific. I would say like 4.5.
4.5?
Because we're not very good at it. We're too few, I think, visible people out in the streets with disabilities. And I think maybe a very small plus for effort sometimes, but we don't think accessibility the whole perspective. I don't think we do that.
When we spoke before, you told me about in comparison to the US, that US is a country which has come much farther in regards of accessibility.
Yeah, and they do have stronger laws that support the accessibility acts a bit better when it comes to physical, at least, accessibility.
But why is that?
Well, they're a large population. There has so many more people not with disabilities, and also they got the veterans, which is quite few people that
military veterans.
Military veterans that served, and they don't have any legs, they don't have any arms, or they got all kind of different disabilities with vision and even PTSDs. So there's a lot of people with problems.
And in the US, they celebrate the veterans as well.
Yes,
because
they do.
It's important things for the society.
Yeah, they lift them up and they actually address them in a different way. We noticed that when we went to New York. Is it 2 weeks ago? And they welcome you in a different way. They see you. They tend to you in a different way than we do here in Sweden.
Because you were there with a person that is blind,
yes,
right? Yeah.
We were running. Well, she was running the New York City Marathon, and I was joining her.
What do you do when you join her when she runs marathons?
Well, I just go with her. We're connected in the waist with a band in between us, and we run together. And I audio describe all the time what's happening around us, what people are wearing, the buildings, and of course where we put our feet.
That's next level. I mean, running a marathon is a challenge.
Yeah.
Doing connected to someone, but also trying to transcribe the environment.
Surroundings, yeah.
Wow.
And it was specifically very hard because there's so many people. There were 2 million people out on the streets, and they're cheering on all day, and they have bands playing. So my voice was a bit tired after 6 hours.
So what you say now is your voice was tired, but not your legs.
No, not really, because I mean, for me, it's good that she's slower than I am, because then I have the time to talk, and I'm not getting out of breath. So it's pretty good to do that. Running with someone that's faster, it's more challenging and difficult, because then you have to you get really tired, both your head and your body physically. I've been running with people that are both blind and deaf, and then you have to do haptic movements on their body, and then it's really challenging because you have to think at the same time. You can't talk, but you have to show them, like with your signals on the body, if we're going up or down or stopping or whatever. So that's very challenging, I think.
Wow, impressive.
And fun.
Yeah, it sounds fun. I never kind of heard about it before, but it does surprise me, because I mean, the global population of disabled people are 15%.
Well, in Sweden, it's about 36%, with all kinds of different disabilities, including NPF and all sorts, like physical and mental health issues. But just a few years ago, we said it was 20% in Sweden. But then it's also, about in 5-6 years, the population in Sweden, like 1/4 of the population here, will be over 65 years old, which also makes us a bit more vulnerable, because we actually get sick the older we get. Stroke, cancer, like everything. So
I guess it's hard to measure the exact number. The number I got was from the Boston Consulting Group report from the world population, 15%. But maybe that depends on what you define as a disability, I guess. Right. So okay. So let's remain in the U.S. for a little bit. How do you think disabled people are treated in companies as employees?
I think it's
for instance,
hard.
Sweden.
Yeah, because they have the same challenges as we do here, that people are afraid of hiring them, because they're afraid to, they sue. We don't do that here, but they get sued all the time. So, and that's what we visited an organization called Sydney. It's an independent living organization, and they work in such a different way to what we do here in Sweden. They help them to get jobs, they help them to get food stamps, they help them to sue if and that's what they do. But they are afraid, because it's a challenge to have a person with special needs in your company. But of course there are people that work with disabilities there as well. But I think they're quite similar to the Swedish ways. You're kind of afraid to do something wrong, I think. It's necessarily not in a bad way. It's just that you're afraid of not being able to handle the situation.
All right.
I heard about this project that the Funka Foundation here in Sweden is doing, where they're trying to train people with disabilities to go into accessibility work, because they have super skills to be able to do that, because they know firsthand what it is to live with a disability. Have you heard of any of those kinds of projects or initiatives?
Like here in Sweden
or in other countries?
Well, not really, but I think there are a few, like that Achilles International, for example. That's an organization that helps people performing sports. So they send people, they have tickets for all the big marathons all around the world, and they help people to actually get through the marathon or the whatever skiing or cross-country skiing races in Italy, for example. Marcialonga, I know they have. And they do lift those people up quite a lot, and they work together and make it happen. But I'm not really sure if there's that many companies that do it.
I learned about the accessibility work at Microsoft, where they hired this guy. He's blind, Manish Agrawal, and he is responsible for the accessibility team there. And they developed a new product line, the Xbox Adaptable Joystick, which is super cool because it's a modular system where you can basically connect all the equipments together depending on what your needs are, so you can interact with the digital channels. And it was really impressive, actually, and also very impressive that a company like Microsoft, big, large global corporation, do this. Of course, cynically, they do it for the big market share. It actually is, but I believe that they also think it's a really good thing to do, because it's an important thing to do as well, to be part of a solution here. Other examples is when I visited Samsung. They have so much products related to accessibility. I tried a few of them myself, both in regards of vision, like contrast glasses solutions, but also this live babyfish translation aid. So I think it's very impressive that these big companies take the responsibility.
Yeah, and I think they do have the money to do it as well. And I think it's good for other people, not only, as we were talking about before. I use voiceover, and I talk to my phone usually because it's faster and easier, and I don't need to sit and find my little buttons and press them, and it goes wrong, and it's a lot more smoother, I think, to use those kind of helps that you can actually. It's not only for disabled people. I think it's for everyone.
And what I learned also is in this year of the accessibility is that a lot of products are not really for disabled people. They are for everybody. Universal design. We talked about it a lot as well. But is there such a thing? Can you really design something that suits everyone, or is it just an utopia? What do you think, Sara?
Well, I'm nerdy about language, so this is one of the things that I think a lot about. What we call this. We can talk about universal design or accessibility, inclusion, etc. I tend to sort of steer away from the term universal design, because it sort of sometimes gives you that idea that there is such a thing as something that's universal and perfect and all enveloping, super design to rule all other designs, but that's not really the case. And it's a sort of a problem that we sometimes see accessibility as something that's binary. It's either fully accessible or it's fully inaccessible, when really it's a long scale of things. So I like to talk more about, you can always make something more accessible or less accessible, depending on if you're thinking about, visual accessibility or cognitive accessibility, etc. But how do you feel about that? What do you tend to call it when you talk about it?
Well, I usually just call it accessible or not accessible, because it's as you were saying, it's a broad spectrum of all kinds of disabilities. And I mean, for people with, for example, visual impairments, I mean, there's everything from, well, I see contrast, I see nothing, I'm, I've got this little spot where I can see in the periphery, but it's so everyone's different, and it works different with different people, so you can't really make everything accessible for everyone, because there will be a small part that will not be able to use anything that you actually make or make use for.
So utopia then.
Yes, I think so.
Is there a way, or is there a purpose of striving and trying to go there, or is it just counterproductive?
No, I think it's good. At least as long as you try, you make it accessible for as many people as possible. But so don't stop trying, I would say.
But if you,
I think it's still helpful to try to, break it down into smaller portions and talk about, okay, which type of accessibility are we prioritizing right now? Is it visual accessibility, cognitive? Is it all about, texts that are easier to understand? But do you have a specific area within accessibility that you're extra focused about?
Well, I like the visual impairments.
Yeah.
Because that's where I'm really started to become very interested in. But then also the cognitive ones, because last year I went through cancer treatment, and I really experienced the brain fog when you have to, and since working with my own business, I need to be in contact with Försäkringskassan, Skatteverket, everything. So, and you have to fill in those forms. Your brain is not functioning properly, and you really need to do it in time and understand what you're doing. So we had some absolute meltdowns, me and my husband, because I said, well, you've got really good understanding for all kinds of different things, and you just have to sit next to me and help me. And these are things I do all the time. Every month I do this, reports to the tax office, for example. Yeah. But then it was more or less impossible. It was just horrible to realize, and very frustrating, that everything just kind of seemed like a big wall I had to climb every time.
It must have been so valuable to be first-hand experience. Yes. And when I've seen talks and keynotes in accessibility, there are lots of people working or interested in this topic who have disabilities themselves. So naturally, they are helping the community to develop. How important is it to have this experience?
Well, I think it helps, but I think you can actually, if you've got a good imagination, you can try things with the different kinds of, you can blindfold yourself and try to buy a ticket to go by train from Gothenburg to Stockholm, for example, and see how that works. Of course, you need to try it several times. It's not like you're going to do right the first time you're doing it. It's like everything. You can't say this is not accessible because it didn't work the first time. You need to get used to it. And then it's really difficult also because, you need to be aware of that and not just change. For example, the train company, you can't really just go ahead and change everything on your website to buy tickets, because it will affect people, and not only disabled people, but everyone. So when you do changes, you need to be careful, I think, because it wasn't an answer to that question really, but
really.
I'm just spinning away.
But it's the same as being a designer, and sometimes when meeting clients, they say that no, let us design it ourselves, because we know the business, we know the products. But being a designer is an expertise in design, and being an accessibility designer, I can understand then you have an expertise in accessibility. So, and then you have to learn tools in order to understand how it works, just like being a designer. So I could figure it can help, but it does not necessarily means to be a showstopper.
No, I don't think so.
What would you say is one of the more common ways or common arguments against accessibility that you encounter? Because I guess you encounter a lot of them.
A lot.
Yeah.
They say it's ugly. It's it's ugly. It's expensive and there's only a few people using it. So what's the use? That's the main arguments.
And what's your reply to those arguments?
Well, if you include accessibility from the beginning, it will be cheaper. And the company will also gain, earn more money because you include more people that can use your services. And it's not necessarily ugly. You can, if you really think and design for it from the beginning and not doing add-ons afterwards, then it's not necessarily ugly.
No, it's not. And it's just like design and usability. And when usability became really important, like 15 years ago, when we started to talk about it separated from at least in the digital world now, in the beginning it was basically the same arguments. So if we do it properly from the beginning, in the right way, in the right process, then we can make it beautiful as well.
And I would say it's just one more constraint on the design work. Design is all about constraints. If you're doing design work without constraints, then it's art and it's something else.
Completely different.
I would say any skilled designers should be able to take those constraints into consideration and do something with it. That's where creativity comes in play. Being able to create something that's both aesthetically pleasing but also functional and creates the impact that both the users and the clients are looking for. So I think it's a bit of a bad argument.
But you have examples when it really comes into conflict. For instance, accessibility design to aesthetics or other aspects?
Well, in the physical world, usually it does, because when you, as I said before, you do not include accessibility from the beginning, then you have to do special solutions afterwards. And then it's not very pleasing for anyone because it's usually not nice looking. And it's not very accessible. It's like, well, it's kind of half and half. It works, but it's not very good, and it looks quite ugly. So I think that's a very common way to do things, because you kind of, we forgot about the accessibility. Let's do something.
But okay, so let's say we do it properly from the beginning. And how should we attack the problem? Do we add accessibility designer to the team, or is it a special phase, or is it special work stream in parallel, or how?
Well, I think you have to do iterations, like work a bit. If it comes to coding, you code a bit, and then you try it on people, and then you work a bit, and then you try it, and you keep on doing that. Because if you just build something and then we come to that, it doesn't work. Where didn't it work? Well, it was somewhere here in the beginning, and now it's too late.
So you can't just do the accessibility design before and leave it over. You need to really be
it should be included from the beginning. And in the workflow all the time, you have to think it in like the workflow as a natural phase or a natural piece of the building of something, anything, both physical and digital.
I think we are in an important space in time when it comes to accessibility in Sweden right now. So we already have existing accessibility laws for the public sector, and we have new laws coming into effect next year for the private sector as well. Have you seen any change in the sort of accessibility landscape regarding to these laws and how different organizations work with accessibility in Sweden?
Yes, I think they're more aware, especially the digital companies, because they kind of get really scared. And I think that's the wrong way to approach a problem
Yeah.
that they stand in front of, because you need to, don't be scared, take a little piece at a time. You can't do everything at once. Just start with little pieces. We had an environment specialist at a job I was working with for before, and she said, well, you can't take everything. You can't do plastic, batteries, glass, metal, and do everything start if you just doing it from scratch. It's the first time you're going to try and sort things. Start with the plastic. Try that for a while. Then go on to the glass and do that and add that too. So I think that's what you need to do with accessibility as well. If you're new to it, just start with something. It's better than nothing.
Don't try to do everything at once, right?
No.
So accessibility is it going to be the new CSR buzzword for companies?
Yes.
It is.
Yes.
Oh, Jesus. So it could be quite challenging. I mean, we got some quite tough regulations and laws coming in now next summer. What's a super elevator pitch if we want to describe these laws for our listeners? What do they mean?
They mean you have to be is business to consumer, and you have to be, well, some products and services should be accessible.
That's vague, right? That's a vague elevator pitch.
We can give some examples of what type of. I mean, when we talk about the digital solutions, it's e-commerce. And it's financial services like banking services, payment services. When we talk about the physical stuff, it's computers and it's phones, and it's also different kinds of self-service terminals.
And audiovisual, e-books.
Yeah, e-books are also included.
Governmental services.
Both private and governmental. So that's the new thing about this new law that comes into effect in June next year. And I would say what will make most difference in the digital world is the e-commerce requirements and also the banking requirements. Mm-hmm. And we're noticing that banks have started working with this. A lot of them a couple of years ago, and have already built up some internal competence where they require that people who start working with them have accessibility experience. I would say e-commerce not so much. No. The tricky thing about e-commerce that's good to know, even if you're not an e-shop, then everything that is sort of a consumer agreement that you make with an end consumer is considered to be e-commerce.
So all kind of agreements.
Yes. So, right. Like, if you accept an apartment from somewhere, that's a
agreement.
That's an agreement, a customer agreement. If you book a place to your hairdresser, which you're going to pay for, then that's that sort of consumer agreement.
If I book a table at my local restaurant.
Yeah, if you're gonna pay for it later, then that's a consumer agreement, and that needs to be accessible.
But I think there's also exceptions, because you need to be at least 10 people in the company, and there's also a limit for
liability.
Yeah, no, omsättning.
Turnover.
Yeah, turnover.
Revenue.
Yeah, revenue. You don't need to. It's good if you do, but you don't need to meet those expectations.
Right. So with a minimum revenue and a minimum of 10 employees.
I think it's 2 million euro or something like that. Yeah.
Which is, I mean, lots of companies are there. So it's, I guess it's tough regulation. What happens if you not adhere?
You get fined.
By whom?
By PTS.
And who will find you?
Well, if you can actually, I was talking to some people here before I came here, and they were talking about an e-commerce company, and they're not meeting up to the standards. And I said, well, wait until the 28th of June, because they already reported it to the Diskrimineringsombudsmannen. But didn't get any really response. So I said, wait until June next year or July next year, and actually ask them to do have a look at the website and see if it meets the standards. And I think that will be quite good to do that. So you can actually report something or ask someone to have a look at a website or e-commerce site or whatever.
How big are the fines?
Between 10,000 Swedish crowns up until 10 million Swedish crowns. And you're not allowed, if you get fined and not actually doing anything about it, then you can be banned from the rest of the EU if you want to sell in other places or other countries.
You banned from the market?
Yeah.
Wow, that's tough.
Yeah, and that's good.
That's good. That's good.
Yeah, I think it's good because it actually forces people to think about it. If you're that big, you can actually think about doing something good for, and you can earn more money if there's more people being able to shop. And that's what we saw during the pandemic, that people wanted to buy clothes, things, and mainly food. And if you're not being able to buy food, like for blind people, for example, they can't go to a shop by themselves because you can't find the right products that you want to buy. Then you need to do it online, and if it's not an accessible site, you can't really get any food because you don't know what you're shopping. I mean, you can get rice instead of beans, and so it's not very functional.
That's interesting. And Sara, you told me the other day that, I mean, the payment system of terminals when you pay with a credit card could be a challenge because they also need to be accessible in loud environments like pubs and bars. Yeah. So how is that going to play out?
I have no idea. I don't know enough about that sector to know how you would be able to solve it in a good way. But I mean, that's typically one of those things where, okay, if you don't have any site, you definitely need to be able to interact in some other way. And I mean, in a busy enough environment that restaurants are, it's good to try to make it more accessible. Exactly how you would do that, I'm not really sure. So we'll see where we end up. But I think, I mean, if we look at it as sort of a design problem, then it could be quite exciting. How do you solve this problem? And design is all about solving problems. So I'm really hopeful that this will spur on some innovation and some new ways of doing things that will make it better for everyone.
And talking about that, it's more and more popular to have screens, like iPads, for example, to make payments. And in the States, you have to do you want to tip 5%, 10%, 15%, 20%, or no tip? Then it's quite impossible because you can't feel anywhere where to press. And if you don't know what to press, you can press 25%, even if you didn't want to tip 25%.
Yeah.
So, and that's a problem because I see it's more and more common here in Sweden as well.
Yeah.
And that's actually bad because if it's like this, lighting comes in from the window, even for me, it's hard to watch the screen because it's all like blank and impossible to see.
And some of the tipping terminals now, even in Sweden, have predefined tips in the higher range, importing it from the US because we Swedish people tend to travel a lot and again used to it. So, and if you're having a cognitive disability and it's predefined tip, and it's really hard to actually cancel out the tip, that could be a challenge because that needs to be adapted as well, I guess.
And I think it's provocative to have a predefined tip
It is.
because for me it is, and I get kind of disturbed because it's not like it's not the way we do it here.
No,
either.
those are some dark design patterns, right? When it's much easier for me to tip, then I just press a button. If I want to pay the exact number, I have to write it in. So it's much higher threshold for me to pay less, and that's I'm sort of hoping that the new accessibility laws will have some impact on that to make it easier for all of us.
Yeah.
But would you say, I mean, that's some specific tech, but do you see any other, I mean, technological advancements that you feel will help accessibility forward? Like,
Well, AI for people with visual impairments, it's absolutely amazing, I think.
how does that work?
Well, you can get, if you just sitting on a bench in a park, you can take a picture and get it described what's in the picture. And it will say, well, there's a person with a wheelchair, or there's a person with a dog, and there's trees, and they're green. And you get kind of really quickly and a picture of what's around you, which I think is great.
I heard about this user using the previously called Be My Eyes, and now it's their latest version is Be My AI or something like that, where it was totally total revelation to be able to take a picture of your mail and see what does this say. I've gotten a letter. What does it say?
Yes.
I mean, that's
It's
really
excellent.
cool.
And even like for colors, and you can take a picture, is that the sweater I want to wear, or it's very good. And you don't need to have a person next to you telling you, because people are much slower.
Ooh, we're overtaken by the AI now.
No, and I think, as we were talking about before as well, I think people are good in some parts. For example, theatre live events, because you can't really foresee what's happening. But for things that pictures, reading things, and I think that's a lot better, a lot faster art. You can do some kind of art to get the big picture, but if you want to go like deeper into a painting or a sculpture, I think then it might be good with the person doing it, but you can also record it.
But also connected to emotions.
Yes, I mean, you can. Well, as an audio describer, you're not supposed to put your opinions or emotions into someone else. You should be very just talk about facts. But saying that, as an audio describer, you usually use words to enhance some feelings or that I get. So it's not really, I mean, if an AI does it, then it's completely square and neutral, I think.
But when talking about theater, for example, and when you have an AI transcribing, the theater set is created with the scenery and with everything in order to induce emotions, with everything from colors, from the spotlights to the clothing and everything. And maybe it can get bland if an AI trying to explain it. Maybe it doesn't really see any nuances what a human can do.
Yeah, but when you trying to explain something, it's up to the person that are watching, or listening to it, to make up their own pictures in their heads. So you should never they can hear nuances. The actors are talking in a certain way, or you can hear if the voices are harsh or smooth. You don't need to put that, like plant that in someone, that you can just leave to the actors to do. The rest is, there's a bowl of fruit on the table. There's pears, apples, tangerines, grapes, and bananas. And that's all you need to know, and they're put together nicely. That's it. And then you have a picture in your head that gives you a good picture, really, about what's happening. So you don't really need to explain too much.
So the AI can do the job, to be honest.
Yeah, I think so. That's a perfect example that AI would do it faster and probably as good or better.
Could it also feel better not being dependent on another human being?
Definitely.
That you feel more self-sufficient when you've got technology to support you?
Definitely, because it's we strive all the time for independency, and that's that's an utopia for people that are completely blind, because they need to have someone next to them. But I think to try and strive for as much independence as possible, I think that would be excellent.
But let's talk about technology. I'm a tech nerd, so it's always fun to. So AI, of course, groundbreaking in this area. But what are which are the common technologies in regards of accessibility?
Well, we were talking about Google Home and Alexa before, and that's very helpful for turning lights on and off in your home, checking who's coming to your door, or baking. You can ask Google Home I want to bake an apple pie, and I can get one ingredient at the time. And she goes, well, what do you want next? Are you ready for your next ingredients? Yes. Thank you. And that's good for people with cognitive disabilities. You can't really, or dyslexia. You can't really read and get things right. And then you have someone to talk to, and you get everything in the pace that you want to have it. And even for visually impaired people, then you can actually bake.
What are the underlying technologies? You have the AI kind of layer here, of course, and you have the voice recognition.
And you got the closed captions and text to, speak to text, which is getting better and better. I mean, it's getting more and more accurate, and it's faster, and you don't, like, for example, a film or whatever, you don't need to say, okay, we can't put this up on the internet yet. It will take us 2 weeks to do that. Now you can just do it because it's fast and easy.
Are there any underrated technologies that we should know about?
One thing that sort of harks back to the thing that we were talking about, that designing for accessibility helps us all. It's very, very common to use accessibility features on your phone. I think when they looked at that, up to like 30% of users make the text bigger, at least in some instances, or change the color so that that you get better color contrasts. And that's one of my pet peeves, color contrasts. We've gotten so far. There's still a lot of bad contrast out there, which I think it's just so unnecessary, and it's sort of underrated. But it still makes a huge impact. Even if I see okay, you're a tech nerd, I'm a brain nerd, so we're the perfect combo.
That's cool.
But even if I see okay, it takes a lot of more cognitive juice from me to read something that has bad contrasts. My eyes struggle more and my brain struggles more. And that sort of energy that goes into something as unnecessary as reading text, when I could have put that cognitive juice somewhere else, like solving a tricky design problem or something like that. I mean, when we make things unaccessible, it means that people have to struggle using them. It means that their energy has to go into shitty solutions instead of doing other cool stuff, basically.
I saw a couple of interesting product releases this year. L'Oreal has their new kind of makeup adaptation tool called Hapta, which is a stabilizer. So micro engines that basically stabilize your hand movements. If you're having a hard time to basically move your hand, and then it can make your makeup beautiful, really impressive. So that's one technology, like these stabilizing kind of units. There were several similar ones, like gloves,
Grip gloves.
Grip gloves, but also gyroscope. So if you're shaking your hand, you can get it completely stable.
I'm super excited about the exoskeleton things.
Yeah.
Partial and for the whole legs, because I am a bit worried about us getting older and not being able to function as well, and there aren't many people who want to work in healthcare anymore because it's so shitty. Yeah. So we're gonna need some tech or other solutions to both take care of ourselves, but also be caregivers to others, especially when it comes to physical disabilities. I have high hopes for those kinds of solutions.
Because it's a big thing when you're getting older, and it's so important to be able to move and walk around.
And being independent.
And that's something that really takes time from caregivers is to adapt or support people to walk and move.
Yeah, for example, my mom, she had a severe stroke, 7 years ago, and she's not able to move, and she can't really lift her eyelids, so she's technically blind. And they didn't want her, because she was old, they didn't want to give her the physiotherapy that she needed to actually maintain the strength in the body. And she's just deteriorating, like every day. And if she had the possibility to move, they wouldn't, break their backs helping her to move around from the bed to the wheelchair, for example. So I think it's very interesting. And me with my hands, I've done several surgeries on my hands. I would like to have those. I could have a Terminator hand that I could fix myself. And I need a little bit more oil, and I can just adjust them myself.
You want to become the cyborg?
Yeah.
Cool.
I started with my chips a few years ago.
Oh, you got those.
Yes, and used them a lot, because that was also one thing. When I wanted to, I never forgot my keys because I had them in my hand. Never needed to think about that. Where do I put my key when I go out running? No, I just had it. And so I think that was really helpful in so many ways. You never forget.
Talking about the cognitive, wasting resources, EssilorLuxottica created these glasses, which is actually a hearing aid. And depending on where you look, it will actually enhance the sound of where you are. Same thing with the kind of AirPods, which enhances and silences different sounds depending on the situations and can actually adapt. That's quite interesting.
Yeah, and the bone conducting headphones as well, that I use a lot, because then I can hear at the same time pick up the surroundings, because I need to do that if I'm a lot of people are walking around with headphones and they can't really pick up what's happening around them, so they get hit by a car or a tram or whatever, so or a
Too bad.
bicycle. No, but it's that I think it's a really good, and they're getting better and better. The sound is getting better and better, and I like that, because you're in your own world at the same time that you actually can be and function at the same time.
Yeah, I think solutions that enhance our human capabilities are good, that make us focus better, make us hear better, make us move better. I think that's where we want to go. So if you had unlimited resources and you could do anything, what's the one thing that you would do to make the world a more accessible place?
Oh my God. There's a lot of things to do. No, but I really like the help you can get from, as we were talking about, hands or like feet or prosthesis. That is really good for making people moving around on their own, or well, just as we were talking about the whole thing, we're landing in that it's independency, that you want to be able to do things yourself. I think it's very important. And those little things that also started to be very common in care homes, little cats or pets. That actually,
robot pets.
Yes, that feels and they breathe and they, you know, that is very, very good for people with dementia and I think that's so important. And things like make you being able to stay at home, in your own home where you feel safe. You can move around, you can, we actually have an oven at home, and nowadays they sell it as an accessible oven because when you open it, the door slides in underneath so you can get really close to it. And that wasn't why I choose it because I'm short and I don't want to get my arms burnt when I get something from the oven. But now it sells as an accessible oven. And it's really good because that's good for everyone. And especially there's a little girl, she had a stroke when she was 7. And she was at our home and she likes baking. And I said, well, try this. And she could open it with her one hand and she could actually come close so she could pull something out of it. And that's very good because, I mean, it's good for everyone.
And also one of the most common injuries in homes is actually walking or falling into the dishwasher lid or the oven lid. And it can really... So
yeah, you can get severely burnt if you're unlucky.
Yeah.
So
this is what I see. I think this is universal design that's good for everyone, especially disabled, but still for everyone. And to some extent, we always used to repeat it that we are all disabled in different locations. Due to environments, getting sun in your eyes or noisy environments, or just being occupied, you have your phone on your ear, you're taking care of your children and everything. So
yeah, being pregnant or anything that's, or I mean, you could have just an injury, which is not permanent, but it's at the moment you're disabled. So.
Yeah, I mean, the human brain is amazing, but it is pretty fragile. I mean, we see that all around us right now with so much bad stuff happening in the world with wars and environmental disaster and economic crisis and everything. That makes us even more fragile because we don't do well with managing stress and uncertainty and fear. And that's where accessibility also comes in. To try to help us to make sense of the world when we don't work so well ourselves.
Very true, and I think it's you need to and it's in when you interact with people. I think that's also a way how to the cognitive bits, how to. When you meet someone that's not open, or then how do you react? You need to learn those things the same time, at the same way you learn other things. You need to be aware of what I can do and I cannot do, and how to help people to interact with you and with other people. I think that's also an ability I think we should use a lot more.
So if someone listens to this podcast and is new to accessibility, resonates with some of the things that we've said here and want to get started, what would be your tips for them?
Well, I should just, as I said before, just start small. Just pick one bit that you want to start with and work on that. until it gets really good, and then get on to the next one, add on things, because it's huge. It's a huge area which you can't really get a grip on.
But being a bit concrete then, so let's start. But how do you know where to start? What's important, and how do you learn where you should look at?
But maybe if you have a website, I would start with contrast. That's an easy thing to change, and it's easy to understand, and it's very visible for the person doing it. So I would say start with the contrasts. And that's, I don't know if you agree with me, but I think
that's a very good starting point. I would also add that, accessibility is a team sport. It's all about collaboration. And the good thing is that if you're curious, there are lots of things happening right now. There are lots of webinars, there's meetups, there's all kinds of things happening in various parts of Sweden to prepare for the new law. So there's a lot of content out there if you want to, if you're curious, and you can go to live seminars. There are other kinds of networks where you can always go to ask questions. I'm guessing we could add some links to this podcast, right? Or can we?
Yeah, I guess so. Let's do it. So we can provide some links.
We can add some links on where to go.
Links.
Yeah.
Or they can just call you, Sara.
Sure, they can always call me.
24/7 support for accessibility. I have bad contrast on my website. Can you help me?
Accessibility hotline. What can I do to help?
No, and I think also it's important to have an accessibility person that is actually working with accessibility and helps to people to remember. Like Sara, she does. Did you think about that? Just add something before it goes too far. And I think if you don't have that person, it's easy to just keep on going the way you always did. So
let's say you're having an app team. You're having an app team, and you are now looking over your process, and you want to add this. You believe in it, and you want to really add something to it. What should you do? Should you hire an accessibility expert, and just put in the team? Or should you define a special accessibility design phase in the middle of the usability and visual design phases? Or should you just go on with testing from day one instead? Let the design team start and the development team start, and then iterative, you just test and feedback? What's the best approach?
Well,
I'm detailed now.
Yeah, but I think actually you need to have that person. If you're completely new to it, then you should have that person, because otherwise you will forget all those steps that you were talking about. Testing, it will fall because you won't remember it. But if you're kind of experienced, then it is. Don't forget, put it in the process. Testing with people with disabilities. And do it iteratively, because you need to do that anyways if you're working in an agile context. So I think it's very important. But if you're new to it, add a person.
And should this be part of the UX design process? Should the future UX designers also be accessibility designers? So it will not be separate?
The interesting thing is we talked a bit about where are we now, what's happened during the last couple of years. I was up in Sundsvall a couple of weeks ago at a full design day all about accessibility at the Mid-University, which was really, really interesting, because we got to hear from students and teachers and companies, experts, etc. To learn about, okay, there are organizations out there who've gone on an accessibility journey, where they started and where they are now. And organizations that work well with accessibility, it's the same thing as with anything else. It's ingrained in the whole product cycle, sort of. that, you know, designers know a bit about it, developers know about it, testers integrate it into their test plan, the product owner knows to prioritize it, etc. So that's sort of where you're heading. But starting, if you don't know anything about it, I would suggest hiring a coach to help you get started. Do a quick inventory with your staff and check, okay, who's interested in this? How could you support their learning if they're interested? Grab a coach, do some training, and then think about how can we try to integrate this into our product cycle in a good way. And start small.
What I'm trying to get here, sorry if I'm confusing you, but what I'm trying to understand here, I'm sure I'm not alone because this is new to many people. And what's the future approach? Is it going to be a specialist in the future? Or is it going to be integrated in other roles, UX, developer roles, etc.? It's like the agile process where 10, 15 years ago, you had agile coaches in companies just to implement agile development process. But now it's so natural, so nobody hires an agile coach anymore. Is it going to be more like that, or is it going to be more like a edge kind of specialist expertise that is going to be needed as a separate role? Just like UX designers today are needed. 15 years ago, many kind of UI visual designers thought they could just also adapt the UX usability concept to their design, but today we can see that it's two different kind of roles.
Well, I think it will, hopefully, I hope it will develop that way, that you're not, it's going to be a natural way to do things, to be inclusive and think accessible, that you don't really think it's accessibility because it's so integrated in what you do. That's what I'm hoping for. But for now, I think experts are needed too, with interest in, you know, in accessibility. But hopefully in 5 years, 10 years, maybe it's completely natural.
And if you're a student, what could you even advise to students who might be listening?
Well, to listen in and learn how accessibility works, because I think they are the future to take this to the next level.
Are there any special courses that are recommended to attend? Or is it self-study?
Well, they don't really have that in, because I did some guest lectures at some yrkeshögskolor, and they don't really have that much because I think UX is accessibility, and I think they kind of mix it up a bit.
There's sort of a lag. I know that I learned when I was up at the Mid-University in Sundsvall that they, for their industrial designers, they have a special course, accessibility course that's called Designing for Freedom, which seems like a fantastic course. And I wish I could go back to school and take that course. So I would say, I mean, do some research. If you're interested, then make sure that the program you're taking has accessibility integrated into it. Or try to see, could you learn by yourself? Start learning by doing.
Yeah, and there's a lot of like groups and networks out there working with just teaching and talking about accessibility in different kinds of areas. So just join it.
I want to ask you, when you started, you know, working with accessibility and meeting other people who work with accessibility, was it something that surprised you about that community of people, or were they like you expected them to be?
Well, it's different. I mean, people are different. Everyone's got their own specific interest. But I think what's common is that everyone is actually doing it by heart. There's a heart in everything they do, because they believe that we could make a better place for people. And I think that's the whole thing. Then we're different. We do people do different things in different ways, but that's what's common, or a common thing that we have.
I've been a bit surprised. There is this network called T12T. They have a Slack community where you can join. And what I'm so amazed by is that people are so helpful. Anyone can come in, ask a question, and a lot of people will join in and try to work together to solve the problem. And that's good news if you're a beginner, that there will always be people that you can go to for help. So it's a nice and inclusive community.
It is.
The accessibility community.
Yeah, it is.
Would have been bad if it wasn't, right?
Yeah. It would be horrible.
We're all about inclusion, but we don't want to help you.
Exactly. And I think that's the nicest thing about working with accessibility, I think.
But lots of things will happen now, and it's going to be very interesting to follow this now in the spring and the summer when these new relations comes to life, and the next years ahead. What's your dream? What's your dream of the future? 5 to 10 years from now, how do the world of accessibility looks like?
A lot better.
In what way?
Well, in starting to think in accessible ways from the beginning, because that's what we're struggling with all the time, that they just do, have a look at this in the end, and then it's too late. So what I would really want is to inclusion from the beginning.
And what will not have been solved in the future? What problems will remain 5 to 10 years from now?
Well,
in what contexts or areas or examples?
Well, I think it will be difficult to navigate for people with blindness or visual impairments, because that's a really tough thing to solve. We don't really know how to do that, because it's hard with the GPS signals. They don't show the right, they're not really accurate always. They don't pick up the differences or changes in the environment. I think that's navigation and maps.
Live navigation.
Yeah, I think that's going to be the hardest thing to solve.
I thought you were going to say cognitive disabilities, but you're more optimistic about that one.
Yeah, I'm more optimistic about that.
Maybe thanks to AI.
Yeah, I think so. I think that will be very helpful, and it's growing and getting better by the day. As long as we keep training the AI, I think it's going to be a lot better. But solving those kind of things, independency for people with blindness, I think it's going to be the most difficult thing to solve.
And Sara, what do you think? 5 to 10 years. What's your vision?
I'm really hoping that I won't have to see any more bad contrasts out there anymore.
You're all on bad contrast.
I'm all about that. It's my pet peeve. No, but I'm hoping that it also gets integrated into physical design more. I mean, it's such a shame that we here in Gothenburg are still building inaccessible roads where people with wheelchairs cannot move forward. I think that's so bad.
That's 100 years late.
Yeah, it is, and we still haven't realized that gatsten is not a good idea. Vad heter gatsten på engelska? Cobblestones. Yeah. I think it's pretty embarrassing that we here in Gothenburg still haven't gotten rid of all our cobblestones. or at least not building any new
That's so
ones.
beautiful.
But they're super inaccessible
For everyone.
for
They
everyone.
can
For
be
high
made.
heels.
But they can be made
Yeah.
accessible if you do it in a different way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But then they get really, really slippery if you you can cut them in a nice way, so they're smooth, but then they get slippery. So
And Sara, what do you think have not been solved in 5 to 10 years?
I think there is a huge risk of whenever we encounter technical progress, we always have to think about, distribution of resources, and when I spoke about, exoskeletons and those kinds of things, I'm not very hopeful that they will go to the people that need them the most. And that's sort of a problem. I don't think that will be solved over the next 5 or 10 years, that we will actually create the accessible solutions to the people who need them the most. That's sort of problematic. But there are several things that need to change about the way we manage our societies and the distribution of wealth, etc. And that's a bigger problem, I think.
That's a bigger question.
Yes.
So it was really great to have you here, Anette. But before we leave, I just want to hear, did you learn something today? Something new?
always. I think every time I attend a conference or a meeting with other people, I think I learn something new all the time.
What did you learn today?
Today I learned a lot about what Sara was talking about, distribution of resources, and how to think about, the technology, how to use it or distribute it. I think that's a new thought for me, which is quite nice to add to the way how to think about things.
And if you don't solve it, you will not be able to solve the problem. So it's important as well.
It's very important.
It's a very nice design problem, right?
It is. And Sara, what did you learn today? What did you take with you?
I thought it was super interesting to hear you explain how you assist someone who's blind with running a marathon, with both the visual and also the tactile approach. And I started thinking more and more about, okay, what is a human best suited for, and when is a machine doing the job better? Because I think we are at an interesting time right now where we're talking about assistive technology in different ways, like taking pictures and learning from that. But that's something to think more about, because there will be cases where a human is more suited, but can that human be supported in some way with technology? And sometimes you'd want to let the technology help instead, so that you don't feel dependent on another human being, because that can feel better. So those are some interesting thoughts to elaborate on, I think. And you?
And me?
Yeah. Have you learned
You took
anything?
mine, because the marathon thing, I was completely humbled. I was like, wow. I'm not even sure I will be able to run a marathon. And also the live translation of the environment and ambience and everything, it was really humbling. But apart from that one, I learned actually that we came quite far with the AI and the home automation services, that they really can help with disabilities right now. And I never thought it in that way, but it's make perfectly sense and it's logical. So that's my learning from today. So thank you very much, Anette. Great to have you here.
And thank you.
Thank you.
And hope to see you soon again.
Yes.